Welcome to week 10. We will be covering chapter 9, which is pro-social behavior. Here is your to-do list for the week. And as you'll notice, we have an extra credit opportunity. So this is on top of anything else I've already posted about extra credit. Again, it's just another chance to pick up a couple points for doing an extra credit. So we'll get to that in a minute. Here are your chapter objectives. So pro-social behavior involves a lot of things. There's a few different areas that we're going to cover. One of the first being kind of like what's considered the bystander intervention area of research. What to do in response to an emergency. How do people act? What types of things do we notice about people? And so that's sort of the big first half almost of the chapter. But then we'll move into looking at some theories as to why people help. And you can also consider this the area of volunteering. What makes people want to volunteer their time or their resources or their money? What are some reasons that we feel compelled to help? And are the reasons good reasons, or are they selfish reasons, or are they both? This is what some of the theories will start to get into. So we'll begin by looking at the definition of pro-social behavior and altruism, the difference between them. We can act pro-socially. We can oftentimes do for others because we feel compelled to, or we feel like we have to, maybe even if it's a social norm. But then there's times when we truly want to help just because we want to do something for another person, which is more of the altruism route. So we're going to take a look at the area of research called diffusion of responsibility. This has been a big area, was sort of a big area, I guess I could say. Back in the 70s and 80s is when really the research took off, and it all stemmed from an individual named Kitty Genovese, who was murdered, and sort of what happened during her murder, which several people witnessed. And it sort of sparked a trend in not only the media, which had a heyday with it, but also in the research looking at what happened. Basically, the people who saw the murder didn't do anything. There were several different people who saw or heard what happened, and nobody acted. So we tend to call this diffusion of responsibility. And Latané and Darley are the two names to associate with that area. And they sort of developed 5 steps that anyone goes through in their head when they're trying to determine whether or not to help out in an emergency situation. So we're specifically talking about emergencies. At what point might help be given? What do people tend to contemplate in their head when they're considering giving help? So you're going to take a look at those elements of the response. And then we'll look at situational and motivational factors, so things about the situation going on, and then things internally about the person, motivational factors that can either enhance helping or inhibit it. Okay, so things like mood, what we see other people doing, who it is that we see. Do we like the person? Do we know the person? Are they in our in group? Are they in our out group? And things like that. We'll talk about how emotional state can influence a bystander's decision to help, as well as pluralistic ignorance. And this is a concept we've already talked about this semester. We'll be looking at how it plays a role in the diffusion of responsibility. When people assume they know what the norms are, and those norms are actually different than what's really going on for the person, this can inhibit people from acting. We can see a greater incidence of diffusion of responsibility. We'll also look at empathy, which is sort of the core concept at the root of altruism. Empathy is not just sympathy, it's feeling with the person and understanding what the person's going through, kind of getting down on someone's level to understand their experience. And so, how empathy is developed in an individual is really going to influence how they help, or if they help, or when they help. And empathy will lead us into discussing the following hypotheses, which are actually part of your discussion board post for this week. So not only will the article talk about these hypotheses, the book talks about them as well. So I want to see you integrating both. But we'll look at empathy altruism hypothesis, negative state relief hypothesis, empathetic joy hypothesis, and kin selection theory. They're basically just 4 different models for understanding how and why people help. Pretty much people's reasons for helping. Why did I help? Why did I give of my time? Why did I volunteer? That kind of thing. We'll also look at gratitude. Gratitude has become an increasingly more researched area as we're starting to realize it has many connections and correlations to how satisfied we are with life, how happy we are when we experience gratitude for anything or just life in general. We tend to have a different way about us that can definitely increase helping. And we'll look at this and how it has to do with catastrophes. When major catastrophes happen, we usually see people really band together and pull together to help in astonishing ways, really. And so what causes that? What's the impetus behind people coming together during a trauma or a tragedy? We'll also look at how personality factors play a role with empathy and prosocial behavior. And some of this leads into what we talk about when we discuss altruistic personality. There's just certain traits about a person, genuineness, honesty, empathy, that a person holds, and that sort of ensures that they are acting more altruistic, just because their personality kind of calls for it. Then we'll look at the various motives for volunteering. Why do people volunteer? Which I think a lot of you will have some experience here. College-age students tend to volunteer more so than the general public, but it isn't always necessarily because they just want to help and feel good doing it. A lot of times it's because they get credit for it, or they need hours for a future job, internship, and what have you. So the motives aren't necessarily in line with the empathy altruism sort of hypothesis of why we help, but nonetheless, it's helping and it's giving back. And people also who have those experiences can change. So we can see people go from sort of self-driven models for helping to more altruistic models for helping once they've experienced certain things in their role as a volunteer. Okay. So the book will pretty much end with just, how does it feel to receive assistance? So that end of it. So not the person giving, but the person receiving. And then just conclude with models and hypotheses of why we engage in prosocial behavior, being able to contrast and compare the various models is going to be key. So I would be thinking of these models in terms of examples, right? What would it look like if someone was helping via the empathy altruism hypothesis being their primary motive, or the negative state relief model? What would that look like? What would be a scenario? Empathetic joy, kin selection. Okay, try to think of examples of what that would look like. And the book definitely gives you several for each. If you can come up with your own, that would also be a great way to study those for the test. So here's your article reading, Article 28. And again, like I said, it has to do with, if we just skip on down here, the different hypotheses about helping. Cialdini was another in the field who did some work here. And so you're going to want to use your text, and you're going to want to use that article to help answer the question. You're basically comparing two propositions. Cialdini's says that we help others mainly because it makes us feel good about ourselves. Okay, fair enough. And then Batson's position, we help each other because we truly just want to help people. So those are two kind of different viewpoints concerning pro-social behavior. You're going to be comparing and contrasting those. So the book is going to help you, and the article is going to help you. I would expect to see an integration of both there. And then the second part of the discussion question involves some of the videos. So let's go back up here. So we've got your lecture slides. The first video is about the Kitty Genovese case. There's a short little clip there about that. And then we have another short clip about a study called the Smoke-Filled Room Study. Now this video has no sound, okay? It's only 2 minutes. It'll show you bystander intervention. What happens when there's an emergency? How do people react? This is a what would you do kind of scenario, a mock child abduction, and you'll get to see bystanders' responses when it appears that a child is being abducted. What do people do? How do they react? Okay. And then lastly, a video on bystander apathy in electronic devices. So this brings into question the age that we're in with everybody on their electronics all the time. We're paying very much less attention to the world around us. We're walking into parking lots on our phones, not looking at who's driving through the parking lot. We are on our phones sitting down eating at restaurants, not paying attention to the people around us. So it's having a negative effect on bystanders who may be near or witness to an emergency situation or something going on. And because we're so focused on our phones, we're not helping. We're not paying attention. So you'll want to watch all those. Those have to do with the second part of the discussion question, which then asks you, sort of thought-provoking. It's part hypothesizing, part kind of what you think, but I want you to also tie in all the information that you're going to see in the videos and see in the readings to help you understand, what factors decrease people's willingness to help. Okay, what kind of factors stand in the way of people helping is sort of what I want you tying in the material to answer that question. And then your response to the video is more like your reaction and why do you feel this kind of incident's becoming more common. So hypothesize using some of what you learned from Chapter 9 reading as to the role that electronic media are playing in bystander intervention and in people's levels of empathy. All right, and then lastly is your extra credit. I have a short little video clip for you to watch about random acts of kindness. And the extra credit is to do your own random acts of kindness. So you can click on the link. It will take you to the extra credit assignment and you can fill it out. But it should be after you've done your random act of kindness. So you can watch the video here and get some ideas for that. Your random act of kindness needs to go a little bit beyond just like helping someone by opening a door for them, beyond what like you would normally do as just common courtesy. It needs to really be an extra special random act of kindness. Okay, so watch the video and get some ideas, and then you can click on the assignment link to fill out and answer the questions that go with that. And that wraps up our week. Please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, have a great week, everybody.